Hello, guys, and welcome to the 2024 Gridiron Football Player of the Year Finalists, award finalist show, I guess. We haven't really come up with a full name for it as we just sitting here starting to record, but these are the finalists. We picked about 40 for the Gridiron Football Player of the Year for the year 2024, going to the year 2025. And, as we go into a new year, Alex, I'm joined by Alex Allison. Also, Gridiron Football is going to a new year. We got to reflect on the previous year we had. So it's been a great year. We got on board with us, and we're happy to have you on board for the upcoming year as well. You've done a great job for us, Alex, throughout the season, of course, with the bowl game that we're going to talk about in the next couple of weeks. But before we go into our 40 finalists, anything you want to talk about just the 2024 year in general for Gridiron Football?
Yeah, Jace. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here along the ride for this upcoming season and all the events that we have scheduled. But this is, before we get to that, we kind of want to put to bed the final kind of glimpses of this year that was 2024. And what a great season we had. All the state championship races were really good, and that made this show really fun to do from week to week. And so for 4 months, basically, we were here every week every Thursday, talking about these players. And a lot of familiar names we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about all 16 Gridiron Football Player of the Week winners, as well as a number of people that we talked about throughout the season as finalists that made the finalist list multiple times. Finally, as well as a number of players that had great seasons and were in our bowl game just a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different players, a lot of different types of seasons for many different teams, and we have 40 names, so we kind of just want to get right into it. So yeah, this is exciting. I am, of course, super happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. And one more quick nugget before we start, because it's really a PSA. I mean, is that all these players that have been nominated, there have been a lot of great players that missed the list this year, but they were all players that really came and supported Gridiron Football, whether a Gridiron Football Player of the Weeks, or they were multiple finalists, like you said, or they participated in the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. They also had great seasons, but they also did a lot with us. So that's really a PSA for the upcoming year, too. We can't stress this enough, but we have plenty of events coming up. We have our Gridiron Football 7-on-7 tournament that's coming up. We have Gridiron Football Elite camps. A lot of it going to be held at Lamar Dixon, where we held our practices for the bowl game this year. So if you are a player coming up as an upcoming senior, or you're in 7th and 8th grade, if you're just a player in general wants to be on our radar, well, we have to see you to really put you on our radar. So we have events coming up. You can go to our website, gridironfootballusa.com/elite camps. We'll say at the end of the show as well. But if you want to be a part of Gridiron Football, you want to be part of the bowl game, you want to be part of this list that we're talking about, Gridiron Football Player of the Year, well, you got to show up to our events. And so that is, we can't stress that enough. So make sure to go to gridironfootballusa.com. And that was what we had to say to PSA before we start. Now, Alex, let's go into our finalists. I know there's 40 of them. We want to make this a quick show. I know everybody's trying to hear what those 40 finalists are. So, Alex, we're going to start off with all of our Player of the Weeks. They get the first mention. So, if you want, Alex, we can kick off the list for the first finalists.
I'll go ahead and kick us off. All the way back to Week 1, the Week 1 Gridiron Football Player of the Week was Brian Broussard, the cornerback from St. Thomas More. He, of course, got this in a 21-20 win over Kieran Crow, where he finished with 4 interceptions, as well as 4 pass breakups. However, the season as a whole, he completed a really impressive season. He had 4 interceptions in that game, and then he also had 10 interceptions throughout the entire season. So he parlayed that really great Week 1 performance into a full season that was really impressive. I got a chance to see St. Thomas More early in the season, just a couple weeks later. And he had the 1 touchdown he had for the season in that game when they came up short against a great Acadiana team. He ended up with that scoop and score. It was like a 70-yard touchdown. He had 10 interceptions. He had a bunch of pass breakups. This was just, all in all, a great senior season for Brian Broussard, who has completed his high school career as one of those cornerbacks that is at St. Thomas More that they're going to look back at and go, yeah, this was one of the guys. This is one of those defensive leaders of an STM team that has had a lot of success. He had a lot of success throughout his career, and he gets to add one last final great accolade being a Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist.
Absolutely, Alex. It's kind of weird to say that the defense was ahead of St. Thomas More's offense this year, but that's kind of what it was. And Brian Broussard was definitely a key player, multi-time state champion. He kicks off our list as our first finalist. Now, our Week 2 Gridiron Football Player of the Week was Zayden Foster. He won in Week 2. Like you said, if you're a Player of the Week, you're automatically a finalist for Gridiron Football Player of the Year. So we're gonna get that straight. If you play Boone ball, you play for Andy Boone at Liberty High School. You're gonna run the football. You're gonna run for a lot of yards, run for a lot of touchdowns. That's what Zayden Foster did this year. Over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. But in that game alone, that Week 2 game, that was 7 carries, 325 yards. 3 touchdowns, also had 90 return yards, and another touchdown in Week 2. I mean, if that wasn't boom ball, I don't know what else is boom ball. But Zayden Foster, he got some really good running backs in the backfield for Liberty Madden this year, and he was a really good player for them this past season. And he's going to be I believe a junior, so he's still got another year coming up. So he could build on this for a bigger season in 2025. But Zayden Foster, he was our Week 2 Gridiron Football Player of the Week, and he's a finalist on this list, our second finalist.
Yeah, they did some unspeakable things to White Castle in that game.
Yeah, poor White Castle, right?
Which it also, White Castle had Demarion Burks, Gridiron Football All-American. Defensive tackle, maybe the largest player in our All-American
6'7", 290 pounds.
Yeah,
he was
huge.
Pretty big.
So to imagine only having to carry the ball 7 times and hitting 300 yards in that game, that's pretty crazy. So that game... very impressive from both him and the other running back, who I can't remember the name of, but he was also a finalist that week. They both had really good games. Moving on to Week 3, our Week 3 Player of the Week was Jonathan Walker from Iowa. So he finished the season with a really impressive year. He had 1,600 all-purpose yards as an offensive player, and then as a defensive player, he finished with 2 interceptions and 5 pass breakups. So he had this full season of really impressive play, just doing everything. He was the do-it-all guy, the Swiss Army knife, the guy that would do everything. And we'll have a lot of those kind of players throughout this entire list, but he's one of the prototypical examples of that. And he did that in the game that he won Player of the Week as well. That game, he had a bunch of individual stat lines that don't sound too crazy. He had 2 catches for 45 yards. He had 14 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he had 5 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and a pick. In a 10-point win over Parkview Baptist. All those things individually sound kind of whatever, but all together, that's a really good game. And a win over a pretty big program in Parkview Baptist that was fairly close. He was the difference in that game. So that's why he was here. That's why he won Player of the Week when he did in a really close vote in Week 3. And that's why he's here as a Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist.
Yeah, so it's great to see Jonathan have the senior season that he did. He's a great player for Iowa, a reason why they made the push that they did. I mean, all the way to the semifinals. And it was great seeing him at our camp a couple years ago. And he was one of the guys that we saw at an early age, I believe as a sophomore at our Gridiron Football League camp. And seeing him have the season he had, that was really great. And I got to give a shout out to Dedrick Welsh as well. That was the other running back for that Foster-Welsh duo at Liberty. So got to give credit to him. Now let's go to our Week 4 Gridiron Football Player of the Week. He's automatically a finalist, and this is a guy that we're actually looking at this year. Definitely high on our radar for the upcoming season. But it's Jerry Botley, quarterback from Southern Lab. Southern Lab has had some pretty good quarterbacks over the years, and they've won a lot of state championships and done a lot of great things. And Jerry Botley is going to be the next in line for great quarterbacks at Southern Lab, and we saw that early on in that Week 4 game where he was 15 for 18, 360 yards, 5 touchdowns, 55 yards rushing as well. They won 54-6, and he totally dominated the game. It showed early on what kind of quarterback he was, because Southern Lab had to replace a senior quarterback from the year before. That was a state championship quarterback in Marlon Brown. But he comes in and is like, hey, there's not going to be that phase like, oh, we had to rebuild that quarterback. That is not happening with Jerry Botley. Everybody knew what kind of quarterback he was going to be heading to the year. But overall stats on the year, overall stats puts him in the good running for Player of the Year as well. Not just that week performance. 2,672 yards passing, 564 yards rushing. He's a dual threat quarterback, 25 touchdowns through the air, 10 rushing touchdowns on the ground, was first team all district, second team all state, and it's a guy that we're definitely going to be keeping our eye out for his senior season. So, Jerry Botley, he saw a lot of his teammates get bowl game offers at the media day, and he has a chance to get that as well if he has a great camp, great off season, and heading to a great senior season. But Jerry Botley coming in as our fourth Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist.
Yeah, he had a really good year, and I think it shows you a lot about the program Southern Lab is, that they made it to the quarterfinals, and it feels like a letdown, quote unquote.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's what type of program they are.
When they go to the quarterfinals, they lose to a big rival, a district.
That's
rival,
a team
Kentwood.
like them,
Kentwood.
A
very
similar team like them.
That game was really good. It's not like it was Botley's fault. A game they lost, I think it was like 50-32. In one of the most interesting brackets, that was the Vermilion Catholic bracket, and they still had a great year, a really, really good year, and they're going to look to parlay a really successful season into maybe getting back to the Dome this next year, when Jerry Botley is now going to be a senior. And he's one of those quarterbacks, not the only player of the week that we might be looking at for the bowl game. But moving on to the next quarterback in week 5, we have Landon Sanchez, the quarterback from Assumption. So his season for Assumption, it was a little bit of a mixed bag for Assumption this year. He finished with a pretty good season. He had 1,600 all-purpose yards and 16 touchdowns throughout the year. But it's really his performance in Week 5 against Morgan City that puts him on this list that won him Player of the Week. He was impeccable in this game. He was 8 completions for only 9 attempts. He only had 1 incompletion the entire day. Super efficient. For 145 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. He also had 7 carries on the ground for an additional 136 yards and 2 more touchdowns and a 55-7 win over Morgan City. So he had only 16 touches, and he had 5 touchdowns and well over 300 yards. That is a special type of performance. Doesn't matter who you play. Doesn't matter what else the circumstances of the game are. It's hard to do that against air. We've said that a lot, but that's one of those prototypical hard to do that against air type of performances. So Assumption, he had a really good year for them and a really, really good game. And that's what puts him here as the next finalist for Gridiron Football Player of the Year.
Yeah, he definitely had a great performance. I'll tell you who had a great performance coming up is our 6th Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist, Week 6 Player of the Week, Dedrick Lassie. He had pretty much a season's worth in just one game. And we're going to talk about that infamous game, the dual running backs. We talk about 2 outstanding running backs playing in that football game. It was, everybody's talking about Harlan Berry, St. Martin's, but Dedrick Lassie says, hey, I'm pretty good at running this football thing to myself, and had himself a pretty good performance. I mean, I don't want to say pretty good performance. That's an understatement of the century. An awesome performance. I mean, what he was able to do on the ground. You told me he ran for 540 yards and 9 total touchdowns. That's a season's worth for a lot of people. Yeah. And he did that in just one game. 29 carries, 504 yards, 9 touchdowns, 8 were rushing, 1 was receiving. That's back-to-back years that a lot of the eyes were on Harlan Berry, and Dedrick Lassie said, hey, don't forget about me. And he showed up with a I tell you who's tired of seeing him at St. Martin's. I'm like, please, kid. Is he a senior? Does he graduate? And he is graduating. That's a good news for St. Martin's there. But overall, I mean, that was a great performance, and that definitely puts a dent in the stat book a little bit with a performance like that. But he had an overall great season. 1,852 yards rushing, 24 touchdowns, had 2 more receiving, had a 109-yard kickoff return for a touchdown as well. You add the math, that's 27 touchdowns last season. Riverside Academy, a big reason why that they could have made it back to back state championship appearances was because of Dedrick Lassie. And, he's not the biggest guy. In fact, he's the smallest guy out there, probably about 5'4", 5',
maybe.
like your Trent Holiday, Darren Sproles, but man, was he exciting to watch? Big things come in small packages, and he was a big play away every time he touched the football. So Dedrick Lassie, one of the outstanding running backs in a deep class in Louisiana in terms of the running back position, deepest I've ever seen, and he definitely deserves his name to be in the running for Gridiron Football Player of the Year.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be at this game that he won Gridiron Football Player of the Week for. It was the biggest vote turnout for the entire season for us. And so when we're talking about guys that might make a real threat for winning Player of the Year this year, that's the sort of thing you're looking for. He had the full season. He had the game. It was a special performance. When the lights were the brightest against the guy on the other side of the field, Harlan Berry, we all know him, that was special. So we're talking about some special running backs here, and we're going to talk about another one that actually Jace is.
Yeah, it's kind of weird for you talking about, but you can go ahead and talk about.
It feels like we kind of got the order wrong a little bit here. But moving on, our Week 7 Gridiron Football Player of the Week was Reed Chauvin from Episcopal High School.
Yep.
He had a great season, a really good season, one of those seasons that would, even if he didn't win, he would have been considered for this, for Player of the Year. He had 221 total touches between catches and rushes for 1,539 scrimmage yards and 22 total touchdowns. So anytime he touched the ball, he was a threat to make something happen. Jace was the front and center, got the front row seat to seeing this all year, to see exactly what he looked like. But the game in question was in Week 7 against Slaughter Charter. He had 30 carries for 192 yards and 6 total touchdowns.
He scored all the touchdowns that
all the touchdowns and a 41-point performance for the team. A 41-22 win. So he was great all year. He was great in that game. And this is a really good Episcopal team. Made it to the quarterfinals this season, and largely off of the performance of this star running back. So congratulations to him for being a finalist for Gridiron Football Player of the Year.
Happy for Reed. Covered his whole high school career. Just saw it blossom from his sophomore year when he started getting a lot of, really his freshman year when he started getting a lot of touches, and then each in his sophomore, junior year, kind of being that sidekick to Braden George, who was a Gridiron Football All-American himself, was MVP of the bowl game, and doing great things at Navy. And now when he graduated, it was Reed Chauvin's show. But a lot of people are like, okay, we're going to stack the box and we're going to shut down Reed Chauvin. That plan did not work because you saw that all season long. He did a great job of kind of handling that, being the number one guy, and he just got stronger as the game went on. A state championship powerlifter. You can't bring him with just one arm tackle. That's going to be the biggest mistake. Episcopal's been known to run with the wing T offense. They've had a lot of great running backs, and Reed Chauvin, he's going to be right up there when we talk about the greatest running backs that have gone through Episcopal high school football history. I've caught a lot of his touchdowns over the years. It was funny to say touchdown Reed Chauvin throughout those years, and he definitely deserves to be a Gridiron Football Player of the Year.
Those are your nightmares now. Touchdown Reed Chauvin.
Touchdown Reed Chauvin. Yep. If I had a nickel or a dollar every time I said that on BSN, I'd probably be a rich man. But Reed Chauvin definitely deserve it, and I haven't seen him and covered him with my own eyes all year long. Definitely deserve it.
You're next.
That's right. That's weird. That is weird. But we're going to go back to our Gridiron Football Player of the Weeks. We had Player of the Year. Like I said, if you automatically get nominated for Player of the Year if you were Player of the Week. And it just so happens this guy not only was a Player of the Week, but he was a Gridiron Football All-American as well. He played in a Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. That's Tyron Singleton, another talented running back from Delta Charter. And based off the junior high game, it was like Delta Charter's got some running backs coming up too. So they've been really good. The Storm is their team's nickname. They do a great job. Coach Wheeler does a great job. And Tyron is a guy that we followed. We had Tyron Singleton a couple of years ago. Tyron Singleton. And Tyron, he was part of that infamous game. One of the most interesting scores we saw earlier this year. No, it's not a basketball score. This is a football score we're talking about. 84-82. They won the don't readjust your ears or anything like that. That's an actual score. 84-82 over General Trask. It took a couple overtimes, obviously, and then he actually scored the game winner, the 2-point conversion too. That kind of put them over the top. But in that game alone, Okay. He had 369 yards and 5 touchdowns. When I did the interview with Tyron, I was like, "You had to be a little tired after that one, right?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I was exhausted." So I was exhausted going over the stat line, much less actually doing that. So 369 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns, and overall great season. 1,672 yards rushing, 300 yards receiving, 19 total touchdowns, and even had a couple interceptions on defense, 2 interceptions. So Tyron Singleton's one of these guys that he definitely deserves it all around. He had the great game. He had a great season. He played in a Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, was a Gridiron Football All-American. To me, he really checks all the boxes. Definitely deserved for Tyron Singleton to be a Gridiron Football Player of the Year finals.
Yeah, Tyron was one of my favorite commitment articles to write for the bowl game. I remember just a couple days before the bowl game got it out, and the way he moves is really it's some of the most aesthetically pleasing football as a ball carrier that I've watched among the All-American bowl game guys. And he played wide receiver in the bowl game, but he can do a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really, really fun player to watch. So even past the stats, he's really enjoyable. I highly recommend checking him out. Great player, super worthy of being in our bowl game. He was great. He was awesome in the bowl game and as player of the year as well. Moving on to the other side of the field, the other side of the ball, we have the Week 9 Player of the Week, Javen Lewis from Fisher High School. He had a really good performance in that individual game, where he had 7 tackles, 2 PBUs. I'm sorry.
In that game,
in that game. 7 tackles, 2 PBUs, and 2 interceptions, including a 76-yard pick six. Going back the other way for a touchdown in a win that was only won by 7 points, 33-26. So when you're talking about a performance, you're thinking, oh, it's a safety. How's the safety player of the week? Well, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. You have a game-changing play and a game-changing performance as a whole with 2 interceptions. So that was a big game for him. That's how he got here. But he put together a really good season as well. He finished with 59 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, a forced fumble, and that aforementioned pick 6. But perhaps the stat that I think is the most impressive of it is the pass breakups. He finished with 19 pass breakups. What a number!
Yeah, that's an unusual high number,
especially for a safety.
Right.
So he's a ball hawk. He's getting there. Maybe not getting the interception every time, although obviously he can do a lot of things with the ball in his hands. But when he gets the ball, he's getting the ball. He's covering people like it's Velcro. He's a great cover safety, always getting to the ball. He was a part of our All-American Bowl game for a reason, not just a Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist, but another one that was in our bowl game. So congratulations to Javen Lewis for that.
Yeah, and Fisher, this is a team that hasn't had a lot of playoff success, a lot of postseason success. They made the playoffs this year, and Javen was a guy that really led the way, like you mentioned, against young audiences. Charter having that pick 6, being the difference there, was the reason he was the Player of the Week. He was a Gridiron Football All-American. He played, like you mentioned, played in the bowl game, got the blocked field goal. Not everybody says that, but Tyus Harrell lifted him up and blocked the field goal. We're gonna have a show just talking about the bowl game and having some good times, good chat. Probably get Andy and Marcus involved as well. We have to get the GMs involved and talk about it. But yeah, I mean, he was one like Tyron. He did it. In the game, got punched his ticket there. But he also had a great season, and then he finished up with a good performance at the Gridiron Football American Bowl game. So congratulations to Javen on a great performance. And we go to our last one at the regular season. This is our Week 10 in Gridiron Football Player of the Week. Now, this was a unique circumstance here. So Kobe Vital is the guy from Abbeville, quarterback, very talented player. As a guy, maybe it's a little precursor to what we'll see the next couple of years, because if you look at his total stats, he actually just really played that Week 10 game. Now, he's a basketball kid. He's played on some of the JV teams and everything going into really that season and started getting more and more playing time. But when we saw what he did against ERAF, I mean, that was a great performance against an ERAF football team that had a high seed. They had number 2 overall seed. And, Abbeville.
They were a good team.
Yeah, right. They were a really good team. Abbeville struggled this year. They led by former LSU Tiger Jonathan Zenon, who had one of the most famous plays in LSU football history with the pick 6 against Tennessee on the national championship year in the SEC championship. And he decided to play Kobe. And when you have Kobe as your name, you're probably a pretty good athlete. But this time it's a football on the gridiron. But 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, had 79 yards and a rushing touchdown, like we mentioned. Didn't play a lot throughout the season, but you get on here if you win Player of the Week. And so with one performance, that's what Kobe did. Kobe Vowell got here, winning Gridiron Football Player of the Week. And I tell you what, folks, I mean, Abbeville, if you're an Abbeville fan, you have to be pretty excited for the next couple of years, because with that athletic quarterback, that's still a really young player. I think he's only a freshman. He was a freshman or sophomore. But to have a performance like that early in your career, when you're just getting started against a really good team, I think we might call his name again next year, but maybe with a whole season's of work next year.
Perhaps, yeah. The future is bright. He automatically qualified for this list because he won Player of the Week, but I think this is a lot more just about the recognition and the bright future for what this might look like next season, where he can start putting together game after game after game like this. And I think that is absolutely in the cards for them. I think it's absolutely possible. That was a good team. They didn't make a super deep run. They got upset, but they're still a good football team.
Right.
2 seed for a reason, and he scored all 4 of the touchdowns against them. And was the large reason why they kept that game competitive. Only lost by 2 touchdowns. They kept it close, 42-28. So it was a really, really good performance by him. So, moving on to, now we're in the playoffs.
Yeah, yes. Playoff time now.
In round 1, our week 11, technically, Player of the Week was Bryce Restovich from Loyola Prep. He did this in a game that was really impressive. He went 18 for 22 for 287 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. So he had more touchdowns than incompletions in that game, and it's in dropping 63 points against Sophie B. Wright in round 1. So that was a great performance by him, and it's what got him on this list. But he had a full season that was really good as well. He was 173 for 289, so solid completion percentage for 2,300 passing yards and 31 passing touchdowns, which is really solid. He also had 355 rushing yards and an additional 3 touchdowns. So we're talking about a guy that had over 2,500 total yards in the season. Talking about a guy that had 34 total touchdowns, and he had that one game, the first round of the playoffs, that got that playoff win over Sophie B. Wright. In a really, really good performance where he was just unstoppable. More touchdown drives than incompletions. That's a Jaden Daniels stat line that we're talking about right there. With that sort of completion percentage kind of stuff. So this is just a great game from him and a great season for him and for Loyola Prep, getting that playoff win as well. So congratulations to him as a finalist here for Player of the Year.
What's up with all these Shreveport quarterbacks? Were they like they just get born there? They just grow on trees and boom! All of a sudden they can throw a football. I mean, like, the talent in that area is insane. There's a couple more on this list we're going to go over, but Bryce Restovich is another one, and he's a sophomore still, so he's still got 2 more years of this. He's a guy we're definitely looking at, and he's a special player to watch. So Bryce Restovich, make sure you hear that name. We're going to go to another guy who's actually on the radar for next year, is a 2026 receiver, and that is going to be Kane Milligan from Bunkie High School. And Bunkie's got a lot of pretty good weapons, right? They got a guy in Kyle Johnson who signed with Mississippi State. Well, Kane Milligan, he won our Gridiron Football Player of the Week for I believe this was the quarterfinal round.
This was round 2.
Round 2. Okay, so this is round 2. So week 12. So the second round of the playoffs, they played Amy. And that's how he got here on this list. Without, the big names, Kyle Johnson and Dylan Compton, all those guys, he was really the difference in that game. He had 3 catches, had his Randy Moss impersonation, 3 catches, 99 yards, and you guessed it, 3 touchdowns. He scored all 3 touchdowns, all 3 catches he got were resulted in scores. And they won pretty big over a really good Amy team that's been to state championships and has made deep playoff runs before. And to beat them 39-14, it takes a performance like what Kane Milligan did with 3 touchdowns on 3 catches with those many different weapons, and him being that top guy shows you the future of what he can be next year. Because there's some question marks with his Bunkie football team next year with losing some of their senior stars. But he is a guy that they will look heavily on next year. Throughout the season, he made most of his opportunities. 28 catches on the season, but a lot of really good yards per catch. 462 yards receiving, and he also had 8 touchdowns. So
he was the big play guy.
Yeah, he was the big play guy in that offense. The increase in production, I think it's going to increase next year when we call his name a lot more.
He's going to get a lot more opportunities. Obviously, everyone knows Kyle Johnson. But now that he's going to be gone, this is going to be, he might take a step forward from just being, the shot guy to being a potential, alpha in that wide receiver room. We'll see how that goes. And he was a large reason. We talked about Compton, we talked about Johnson. But you got to have a lot of guys if you're going to beat a physical team like Amite. They beat Amite, they beat Jules Sumner. I was at that game the next week. Two teams that were really physical. That's not take away from Monkeys physicality and in the trenches. J.D. Smith was at our bowl game. He was really good.
Right.
But you got to have some speed if you want to match up against a team known for doing that sort of stuff like Amite is. And Kane Milligan was a large part of the reason why they were able to move past Amite when you have a performance like that. So we're moving on to
a tie. That week we had a tie.
Kane Milligan won Player of the Week, but so did in Week 12 in Round 2. My personal favorite performance of the entire season.
I can't argue against that.
For Gridiron Football Player of the Week, Demille D.J. Garrett from Pine High School. So, I'll go ahead and go through the game first because it gives context to his stat line for the season. In the game, he had the same game. He had 7 catches for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. Stop. That is a Player of the Week performance.
In itself.
That's a Player of the Week performance alone. He also had 5 tackles and 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
In the same game. He had 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in the same game, 193 yards. And that was in the second round of the playoffs and a win over Kaplan. So that's a close seeding game. Mm-hmm. This isn't some schmuck that he was doing this against. No. He had 2 of, I believe there are 3 touchdowns or there were 4 touchdowns in the game. It was a great performance. So, what does his season stat line look like? 73 catches, 1,100 yards, 1,148 yards, 9 touchdowns, as well as 11 interceptions on the season. Yeah, this guy's special. He was a bowl game kid for a reason.
Yep, he was.
He had everything. He had a really special season. You don't do that usually. Mm-hmm. He was in the bowl game for a reason. He had one of my favorite performances of the entire year.
Oh, yeah.
He was the guy. He had the trifecta. He had everything. So congratulations to him for a special performance and a special season.
Yeah, he was a ball man for sure, whether it was on offense, defense. He was a guy that's been to our camps before in the past, too. Shows you what kind of athlete he is, long, rangy, ball magnet. During the bowl game week, he had a basketball game during all this. I don't know how he did all that, but he did. And just a special athlete. I think had the longest pass reception in the bowl game. He had a deep one from Nino during the game. So that's why we brought him in, showed his big playability.
It was a fun connection.
Yeah, it was a fun connection to watch, not only during the game, but in practice as well. That was our unique tie. Tie for week 12 Gridiron Football Player of the Week. But hey, both of them are Player of the Year finalists. And we're going to go to a state champion in week 13, and that is Hagen Herring from Sterlington High School. Hagen was you're a state championship MVP. You play at the highest of highs in a big time game. You hear
not the game he's here for.
But that's not the game he's here for. You're right. But he was a state championship game MVP. The reason he was here was what he did in the upset over Oak Grove. Which remember Oak Grove won 4 of the last 5 state championships. Could have been 5 out of 6.
They went up a division.
Went up a division. That was the first big test in the playoff bracket. And they ran into Hagen Herring. Hagen Herring had 11 carries, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns. Not a lot of carries, but he made up for it. Every time he touched the ball was a big play. Big yards per carry average there. Just about a hair short over under 1,300 yards rushing this year, so 1,294 to be precise. Double-digit touchdowns, 14 touchdowns. They had so many running backs. T.J. Birch, they had him. You saw in the state championship game they had 4 or 5 different guys they could run the football with, but he was their big play guy. Every time he cuts the football, big things happen. Herring, if you live in the Monroe area, that's a familiar name because Hagen, not only he is a state champion for Sterlington, but his older brother was a legend at Washita Christian, at quarterback, and Hunter Herring. So that was his brother, and it seems like that Herring gene, they know how to play football up there in Northeast Louisiana. State championships, both won state championships, both were MVPs in their state championship games. So, I mean, the Herring bloodline's running pretty good up there. But Hagen Herring, Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist.
Yeah, the context is really important with the season stat line. That the state championship, so he won state championship MVP despite the fact that 5 different players had 9 or more carries in the game for Sterlington.
Yeah.
They spread the ball out a lot, and he still won MVP. That tells you how much he stands out. He still had 1,000 yards when there were 4 other guys taking carries away from him.
Mm-hmm.
So the carry number, I don't remember the exact number, but it was
similar to what was all season long.
Right. No, I mean like for the season. It was not a super, he didn't have a high volume, so he was very efficient.
He was.
So I know that yardage number doesn't pop out to you, but he was great down the stretch as well.
Yeah.
He was really efficient. He's a really, really good
He played his
player.
best in the biggest games. The game against Oak Grove, the state championship game. Hey, big time players make big time plays in big time games, and that's what Hagen Herring did.
He was fantastic. But now we're going to move on to the semifinal player of the week, and that is Jacob Crane from Franklinton. He was the leader of this Franklinton team that ended up having like close win after close win after close win. As the quarterback, a lot of that's on you. And we saw that in the semifinal game where he won Player of the Week against Iowa. He finished 15 for 24 for 366 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns in a 35-29 win where he got the game-winning touchdown pass. So he led the game-winning drive. He had a lot of those this season. This was a Franklinton team that came up just short in the state championship game, but they were 7-0 in one-score games going into that game because they had a quarterback who was never worried in that situation. Always cold as ice, ice in the veins, as they say nowadays. He was cool, calm, and collected. He was that in this Iowa game. He was great in that game. That's why he's here specifically, because he automatically qualified. But he put together a season for a Franklinton team that had that 1-year turnaround from 3 wins last year to the state championship game and being this close to winning the state championship because he had a great year. 2,400 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. Great TD to interception ratio. So he had a great season. He had a great game. He was the one of the big reasons why they got to the state championship game. So congratulations to Jacob for that.
Yeah, and Jacob was runner-up Gridiron Football Player of the Week earlier that year, and it was good. It was satisfying for him to win that award, especially get Franklinton back to the Superdome for the first time in a decade plus, and having the just the bounce back year that he's had as well. How much he's improved from being a sophomore to being a junior quarterback, and really leading the team and putting on the shoulders. He made some big time plays in the end because they won a lot of close games. So a huge kudos to Jacob Crane. He's obviously on our radar as well for this upcoming season. So hopefully Jacob can even build on that. Maybe win a state championship as well because they were this close as well for winning state. And then finally go to the Dome, right? Our final Gridiron Football Player of the Week, like we mentioned. Everybody that's won Gridiron Football Player of the Week, they'll get their Letterman jacket patches. We'll have an awards banquet. We'll announce the date of that. That will be the day we'll invite all the players to come down and get their Letterman jacket patches. So we'll let y'all know about that. But we got the Letterman jacket patches in, but we're going to have an awards banquet to give those patches to y'all in person. But our final Gridiron Football Player of the Week, that's a Player of the Year finalist, is the Diesel. Diesel Solari from Cecilia.
The guy that beat Jacob.
The guy that beat, you're right. The guy that beat Jacob Crane in the state championship game, and Diesel, like he was as a junior, he just had a great run to the Superdome. A lot of gaudy, eye-popping numbers on the way to the Superdome. Came up short to district rival Opelousas last year. This year, they did a little bit of a unique way. They weren't the top seed or anything. They actually were an 18 seed. Won every game on the road against higher seeds. That's hard to do, and they had a tough area of the bracket where they were playing at, and they just won game after game, and a lot of it had to do with Diesel Solari running the show. But it was a state championship performance. He had, it was 69 yards passing and a touchdown, but that's not what got him there. winning that state championship, winning the MVP. He had 18 carries, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns, and actually the touchdown pass was the game winner, ended up being. So, he does what he does on the ground. Great athlete. He's actually, I think, the first guy on this list. I got to go back and all the way look, but I think he's the first guy on this list that was a Gridiron Football Player of the Year last year that has another chance to win it this year. Overall numbers for Solari, and this is not in every game. He missed some games because of injury, and that's him coming back. He threw for 1,569 yards passing, 25 touchdowns through the air, and on the ground. He ran for over 1,000 yards as a quarterback on the ground, and 16 touchdowns. That is insane. That's like 41 total touchdowns and just limited action. Because he had to come back. He was injured early in the year, came back, played, had that miraculous stretch in the playoffs where he went off every single game.
They were unstoppable.
And they were pretty much unstoppable on offense. And Diesel Solari was the guy that led the show. He was so determined after losing the state championship game last year as a junior to come back as a senior, and then finally Cecilia back to a championship. I believe their first time since 1995. So Diesel, he definitely deserves it. Congratulations, my man. You're Gridiron Football Player of the Year finals.
Yeah, so he is the last of the Player of the Week winners.
Yeah.
So now we're going to be moving on to guys that have some. They're here for different reasons. Maybe they're finalists.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just had a season so good you can't ignore them.
Yeah.
But we're largely looking at guys that had great bowl game performances.
Yep.
And in our All-American Bowl game, and guys that were finalists that we've already talked about on the show multiple times.
Right.
So we're going to start with a guy that just had a season that was so good. He's the other category. He was so good you just can't ignore it. That is Ben Taylor from Airline, all the way up in Shreveport. Another one of these guys that we talked about. Where are they getting these passes?
They like to throw the ball up there. They like to throw the pigskin up there, Alex. I'll tell you that.
It's the Louisiana version of the Big 12 up there, the old Big 12, where you're just scoring so many points. The General Trask Delta Charter game. We'll talk about another guy later, but Ben Taylor at Airline had one of those seasons. The best passer in the state of Louisiana this year.
Mm-hmm.
4,357 passing yards, 47 passing touchdowns. He also added on 200 yards rushing and 9 rushing touchdowns. He had 56 total touchdowns in a season. And just like 12 games, I believe.
Yeah.
They didn't make a super deep run. I believe they lost to Destrehan.
Second round?
No. They had a bye. They won the second round and they lost to Destrehan.
Yeah, you're right.
Where, it wasn't his fault. They still scored 41 points in that game.
Yeah.
To Destrehan. But they had a really good season. They were in finals in 12 games, throwing for well over 4,000 passing yards is unbelievable. The best passer in the state of Louisiana this year, and a very worthy finalist for the Gridiron Football Player of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the great passers in Louisiana high school football history. In terms of public schools, we're talking about, he is the leading public school passer of all time in Louisiana high school football history. So he's thrown a lot. He was the leading passer last year as a junior, leading passer again as a senior. Not total shot going into the season. I know Northwestern State fans are super pumped to have him committed to the Demons. I know they're really excited about that. Ben Taylor was a great football player, man. Put just eye-popping numbers week in, week out. It was you could not overlook that. To do that as long as he did each and every week, that's something special. And I know Demons fans are going to be really excited to have him on campus. I'm really excited to see what his future holds as well in Natchitoches. Now we're going to go from one quarterback to another quarterback, and this quarterback, he made it on the Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist as a Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist because he played in the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game and really showed out and had himself a great season. We were here from really the beginning to the end. He was at Gridiron Football Media Day at the beginning of the year, and we saw him at the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. Dylan Compton, he was a huge reason. We saw the 2-year run that Bunky has had the last 2 years. He was a huge reason behind that success. He was the Louisiana Class 3A out of the whole classification. He was the player of the year in that class, district MVP, and you look at his numbers, 2,855 total yards, 41 total touchdowns. Similar stat line like his junior year, similar numbers as his junior year. Had like 80 touchdowns in 2 years. He did it throwing the ball, he did it running the football. A smooth runner. You saw him in the Gridiron Football American Bowl game, and it shows you what kind of player he is because he wasn't 100%, but he went out there and he wanted to compete. He wanted to compete against the best of the best and show himself, and he really did have himself a great performance in the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. Was the winning quarterback. Threw a touchdown pass. I think the play of the whole game was a touchdown pass right before halftime to Ellis Stewart, and he was the one that threw it. He looked good running the football. Great dual threat quarterback. Won a whole lot of games. Has put Bunkie right back on the map, and they were this close to making the state championship game this year too. Made it all the way to the semifinals. So Dylan Compton's a special athlete. He's got a couple of offers right now. Whoever does sign this kid is going to get themselves a stud, and I'm really looking forward to see what the future holds on the gridiron for Dylan Compton because he's definitely a special game-changing quarterback.
We talked earlier about Kane Milligan having a lot, shoes to fill, right? If he wants to be like the number one guy, and people thinking, there's a lot of people to replace at Monkey. Dylan Compton's a large part of the reason why. Senior that has opened up a 2-year window for Bunkie of success that. A return to prominence, and we'll have to see if they can parlay that into continued success even after he leaves. But it'll be a lot big shoes. Whoever is going to be the next quarterback at Bunkie, there's going to be a lot
big shoes
to fill.
Big shoes to fill.
But I'm the one that's lucky enough with the way we rotated to get to talk about the next.
You got the luck of the draw. I mean, it might take about 30 minutes for you to go through the whole stat line for this guy, but go ahead and try so you can get it done.
It's going to be the Daenerys Targaryen, titles afterwards.
Yeah. State
champion, quarterback for Vermilion Catholic, Jonathan John Dartes.
Oh, yeah.
I will be very clear with this, he will be getting my vote for Gridiron Football Player of the Year because he had the unbelievable season for Vermilion Catholic. So I'll just mention this briefly, he broke the career touchdowns record by Juwan Johnson last year.
Juwan has to be upset.
Yeah.
A year?
1 year, 177 total touchdowns as a quarterback over these last 4 years. This season, he had 348 carries as a quarterback with no fumbles. 0 fumbles.
That's most impressive.
We're going to talk about some stupid numbers in a second, but that actually might be the most impressive part.
No fumbles.
0 fumbles. In 348 carries, he had 2,761 rushing yards for 8 yards per carry.
That's just rushing.
Average. Rushing for 44 touchdowns. That's just running.
That gets you on the list right there.
That
you can stop, and that'll be it for me.
Oh yeah, he also played quarterback.
He threw the ball too.
He had 1,638 passing yards with a 63% completion percentage, 23 passing touchdowns to just 4 interceptions. So in total, he had 4,689 yards, 67 total touchdowns. Nobody has that many touchdowns this season. Nobody comes that close. Nobody.
Yeah.
Not one person. It's an unbelievable season. I got to see him win the state championship game. I was lucky enough. Jason was running a little bit late that day.
Yeah.
But I was the one lucky enough to get to see on the field for the state championship. The way he runs is so interesting. The durability. He's the sort of guy that he's really small. He's like 5'8". So he's not a guy that's going to fight through contact. But his vision, the way he feels the vision as a ball carrier is really special. He's gonna play somewhere at a college level, and they're gonna get a guy that, because of his size, he's gonna go to a smaller school than he probably should go to, and he's that kind of talent when it comes to the ability to run the ball, carry the ball, throw the ball a little bit. It's special. He's got the speed, the athleticism, but it's the vision that stood out the most to me.
If there's a comp to him real quickly before I go to the next person, he reminds me of, as far as running the ball, it reminds me a lot of Manziel. I mean, he's just kind of like slippery, and he's kind of like the gingerbread man. Think he can catch me? Ha ha ha! That's what he kind of runs like. Like he can't catch me. I can run around, do whatever. But like, yeah, it was just so hard because you knew who was getting the ball every play. Like it was like they made no mistake about it. They made no secret about it. It was like, oh, now he's going to run to the left. He's going to run to the right. I mean, that's basically your only guess. But you knew he was going to get the football. And, to do that over a whole course of the year, not fumble, not only that, but to stay healthy for the whole year doing that. Because he took some hits, he took some pounding because he had the ball every single play. And to have that type of production,
I do want to
that durability, like you said.
I forgot to mention briefly about the championship game before we move on. He had 47 carries, which is not just broke by a decent margin the carry record for the state championships. In the Superdome. He also... in that first drive, he had 10 carries on the first drive. The opening drive of the game was a 13-play drive that scored a touchdown for him. And that's when you set the tone. Oh, yeah, every single play, he's the guy that's going to have the ball. So, yeah, just absolutely special.
And speaking of another special guy who ran the ball for a gazillion number of yards and probably could have had a state record, he was also one of the all-time leading rushers, like my man Jonathan D'Artez, like Xavier Ford from Leesville. And the state leading rusher, you play for Leesville, your last name is Ford. Yeah, you're going to be a good running back, and that's what he was. I mean, I think that was Michael Ford's nephew, I believe. Either his cousin or nephew. There's a relationship there, and you can see why on the football field, right? I mean, 3,467 yards rushing, 45 touchdowns. One of the state's all-time leading rushers in just high school football history. Because he did that this year, but he's been doing that every single year. So it wasn't like a 1 year, who's this Xavier Ford kid? He's always been one of the leading rushers year in, year out. To have 3,467 yards rushing, like passing, if you told me that stat line passing, that would get you on this list. He did that running the football, and every single week he ran for 305, 404. Like he was the workhorse each and every week, and he just got better as the game went on. And it shocks me why he's not getting as much attention as he really is, considering that you lead the state and not only lead any state in rushing, lead this state in rushing
in this
year with all the running backs. That's saying a lot. Michael Ford, Leesville's had a great tradition at the running back position. Running back position, Cecil Collins, Michael Ford, Eddie Fuller. They produced a whole lot, and it's going to be Xavier Ford on top of the record books, which is saying a whole lot.
Yeah, it's not Harlan Perry, not J.T. Lindsay, not Jonathan D'Artez.
Yep.
Xavier Ford was the leading rusher, and not the guy that we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, he's up there. Yep.
Chad Elzy,
yep.
Poppy Elzy. Chad, yeah. Who? We got to see him in the bowl game, and he was as advertised. We knew this. He dropped 9 touchdowns against Opelousas Catholic last year in the playoffs. Not part of this stat line, but even without that, he still dropped 2,200 rushing yards, which I guess sounds like small potatoes after Xavier Ford. Still unbelievable. 2,200 rushing yards is really impressive, but also 38 touchdowns.
Yeah,
that's the thing. 38 total touchdowns on the season. Special runner. There are a lot of really good runners this year, and he's one of those guys that I think we all hear about, the J.T. Lindsays and Harlan Berries of the world, but he sometimes gets forgotten, and he really shouldn't be. Really shouldn't be, because he was in a All-American Bowl game where our strongest position was running back. He was the best running back on the field. Yeah. And that is, there were a lot of really good running backs, and we're going to talk about a few more of them later on, but he was the best running back on the field. He was unbelievable. So congratulations to him. I mean,
it kind of like Reed. I followed Chad a lot throughout his whole high school career. Was calling like, who is a sophomore here? Just 3 years ago. And just see him, in that sophomore year, they had a lot more talent around him. So it wasn't until his junior year, all right, you're the show. And his junior year, start off, I was at the scrimmage against St. Michael, returned the open kickoff return for a touchdown, first play of the season for him. And then he had the season, he had 50 touchdowns, over 3,000 yards, all-purpose yards as a junior. It's kind of crazy you mentioned those numbers, and that was his down year, senior year. But I mean, it shows you what kind of player Chad Elzy is, man. Special kid, special human being, great football player. If you're a college out there, you'd be crazy not to give this guy a shot. I mean, Chad Elzy is a fantastic running back. Great vision, balance, and he's got some decent speed as well. So like he's got the whole package to me as a running back, and he's got that burst, that first initial burst as well. So good luck trying to tackle him one-on-one because that ain't gonna happen. So special player, follow him out his whole high school career. I was super pumped that he was the number 1 overall draft pick in the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. So to see him ball out like he did for his final high school game for Ascension Catholic and have the type of career he's had at Ascension Catholic, I'm gonna miss seeing Chad Elzy run the football in high school, but looking forward to wherever he signs. Got a couple offers already. Looking forward to see where Chad Elzy sends his career. And it was awesome to see him with his Letterman jacket around, wearing the Gridiron Football Player of the Week finals last year. He was a Player of the Year finalist last year too, and he gets another shot, another crack, maybe in the Gridiron Football Player of the Year this year.
Mm-hmm. So you get the honors of getting. I got D'Artes, but another one of our favorites are throughout this season. Another bowl game guy you get to talk about.
Oh yeah, Ellis Stewart, and like Chad Elzy, he was one of those type guys. He was going to be quit before Andy or Marcus took him in the draft. It wasn't going to take long for his name to get called. And Ellis Stewart, what a player! I mean, just what a athlete. He can do pretty much everything. We talked about Diesel Solari earlier. There was a period where Diesel couldn't play. Guess what the quarterback was? It was Ellis Stewart. Ellis Stewart was the player. But Ellis Stewart, it's just like Bo knows. Like Bo Jackson, that whole campaign with Bo Jackson. Like, if you pick up anything, a basketball, football, he was just going to be good at it. That's Ellis Stewart. Ellis Stewart played quarterback. He played running back. He played wide receiver. He was the team's punter as well.
He did kicks too.
He did kick, and this was a really talented team. I mean, Braylon Callaway, state championship team.
Cecilia.
We'll
talk about that in a second.
Braylon Callaway is on that team. Diesel Solari is on that team. But this is the guy that did everything. And then he had 1,500 yards of offense, including throwing, running, receiving, driving the bus, handing out the water, whatever. That's 1,500 yards, 20 touchdowns. He caught the game-winning touchdown from Diesel Solari to win the state championship for Cecilia. And by the way, he was the MVP of the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. Two catches, 2 touchdowns, a backflip, and a partridge on a pear tree, basically, for Ellis Stewart. And just like I said, what kind of athlete he is, that was just all on the gridiron. He's a 400 batting average baseball player. He bats 400 in baseball. Basketball, he's a double-digit point scorer in basketball. He's on the state champion track relay team. It's like, I'm sure you give him a hockey stick or something, or a cross stick or something else. I'm sure he'll be great at that.
Can he do choir?
Choir, you name it, he can do it. But that's just what kind of athlete he is. And Ellis Stewart, he doesn't get mentioned enough. I mean, everybody talks about Diesel and Calais, but he definitely needs to be mentioned more. I think how important he was.
I think it's because of his role and the fact that he's sort of that like Jonathan Walker, G.J. Garrett kind of player where he's not going to put up some crazy number in a specific stat. That's why like the stat line we have for him is 1,500 all-purpose, 20 total touchdowns. He's very good at everything.
He's like Taysom Hill. He was their version of Taysom Hill.
It's because he didn't put up a crazy stat line in any one thing, and so he's kind of flying under the radar a little bit, and he should not be doing that. Yeah. He is that good. So moving on to a pretty unique player on the list because we've talked about a lot of different positions: quarterback, running back, wide receiver. He's sort of a wide receiver, but he's a tight end.
Yeah.
From Oklahoma. Oklahoma, Donovan Jackson, the tight end, All-American Bowl game representative from Oklahoma, 71 catches for 1,278 yards and 11 touchdowns. He was their district offensive player of the year. He was a tight end.
Yeah.
Yes. Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
Kind of
long,
vibes.
6'3", about 215, 220. He's kind of like that tweener between a receiver and a tight end. But he was a playmaker. Anytime a position like that, is your district offensive player. Yeah, that shows you what kind of impact he had when he was Gridiron Football Player of the Week finalist. Like, he was the reason they won, just with the stat line, running, receiving, all of that. He's a playmaker when he get the ball in his hands. Got to see him in the Gridiron Football Player All-American Bowl game. We knew what kind of player he was. He's an interesting character off the field as well. But like he's a good dude, great player. It was great to see him get Oklahoma represent as well. That's what we are trying to do last year's Gridiron Football Player of the Year. Woodard came from Texas, Westwood High School, and Kavian Bryant. So yeah, I mean we can get more and more states involved.
Might see if we get another out-of-state winner. Maybe he'll represent Oklahoma to win Player of the Year this year.
Absolutely. And speaking on that same mindset, right? The next guy we have is also from outside of Louisiana and also from the state of Texas that we just talked about. And this is one of the quarterbacks, and it's Keegan Abels. So his dad, Mitch Abels, is the head coach of Hawley High School. They won multiple state championships, and Mitch got to see his son play. And Keegan has a younger brother that we'll talk about, a wide receiver, tight end hybrid. He is the real deal as well. Camden Abels. But Keegan had himself a great career. I mean, great dude. One of the best dudes I've met at the bowl game as well. Great human being. You can tell he was raised right. But just a great football player. Like he was one of those guys that whatever it took, he was going to do whatever it took to win. And that whether it was throwing, running, he was tough as nails. He would truck you if he wanted to for the first down. He was that type of old school quarterback mold, But he has some pretty good stats. I mean, if you look at the numbers as well, he had some great stats last year, and then he kind of built on that on a great junior year. His senior year, he completed 63% of his passes for 3,473 yards. And 36 touchdowns throwing the ball. So he can sling it, but he's actually really a dual threat type of quarterback. Can run 661 yards rushing, 10 touchdowns. So 46 total touchdowns this year, over 4,000 yards of offense. It was unfortunate. I wanted to see more of him at the bowl game. Injured his shoulder a little bit, and a little banged up in the senior game. Was looking pretty good before that. Wanted to see more of him, but I already saw plenty of his tape over his high school career, and like you said, he's got a bunch of offers already. So he is going to be a guy that will be successful wherever he signs to play at the next level, because he's just an old throwback type of quarterback that head coaches will die for to have on the football team.
Yeah, he's a great player, he's a great dude. One of those guys that not a big ego guy, not a guy that's like, oh, he'll go somewhere and maybe he'll be the backup as a freshman, presumably at most places, and he's not going to whine about that. And these are all like from all of the experience. That's not to like, I don't want to be one of those people who's like, oh, this guy, but these other people. I don't want to imply.
No, all these kids have been great.
My experience with every kid that I've met has been really positive. Yeah. So that's true for a lot of these guys. So I just want to make that clear. But Keegan's absolutely great dude. We're going to move on to, we already talked about Jacob Crane, but we're moving on to Cy Austin.
Yeah.
The MVP for Franklinton in that great Franklinton-Cecilia game. To put in perspective how good that game was, this is the fourth player in that game that we've talked about for this list.
You're right.
We've talked about Crane, we've talked about Solari, we've talked about Stewart, and now we're talking about Franklinton's MVP, Cy Austin, who had a great game. He's not here for that performance specifically, although he was a finalist that week, of course.
Yeah.
But he just had a great season.
Yeah.
Very simple stat line. He had 2,078 rushing yards, and he had 31 touchdowns.
That's pretty good.
That's really good. And we talked about Jacob Crane being a large part of the reason why Franklinton went from being a 3-win team to making it to the state championship game.
That backfield.
Yeah. Cy Austin was the other main reason why.
Yep.
And Bo Webb's great offensive lineman. They had a great team around them. It wasn't a 2-player team.
Right.
But the two superstars in that backfield, they were the superstars for a reason, because they were that good.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacob Crane was awesome, and Cy Austin was the man. Whenever they threw the ball, they were great, and whenever they handed the ball off to this dude, I believe he had 3 touchdowns. He had, I think, like 150 rushing yards-ish.
He may be the most underrated running back in the state.
He's saying something.
Yeah, I was just saying something.
Like, even among the guys that, people forget about, he's the guy people forget about.
Yeah.
And he's so good. He's so good. He is awesome. He is simply awesome. Super deserving of being here.
Oh yeah, I definitely concur and agree with you there. Great football player. Was leaned back to get him to the state championship. I mean, I saw him multiple games, and they leaned on him a whole lot throughout the season. And big reason why they've been the most improved team this year. We're going to go to Alabama. We're going back to where you graduated. Those roots. Yeah,
I don't need to be a little quiet about that, but.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's a reason why you're pretty quiet about that. But we're going to go to a quarterback that we've really followed on at Jackson High School. Landon Duckworth Ducks can fly, right? So if you have Duckworth in your name, you kind of have to throw the football a little bit, right? You got to air it out. So Landon Duckworth definitely did that, and there's a reason why he's a really talented quarterback in class of 2026, I believe, and he's got
4-star already.
4-star already. So the big guys are all over him. Just kind of what Kavian Bryant was ranked Gridiron Football Player of the Year. He's a guy who's been constantly nominated, and I don't blame Coach for that when you have a single car like that. But he was 162 for 243 last year completion attempts, 3,439 yards passing. And he also ran for 648 yards. You add all the touchdowns he had throughout the course of the season. 51 total touchdowns this year for Landon Duckworth. A special quarterback, can throw it, can run it, can take over a football game. And, he's definitely an SEC caliber type of quarterback that you'll be seeing playing. You're watching ESPN. On Saturdays in the fall, you'll see Landon Duckworth play.
He's we're going to talk about the big names from this class later. A couple of them are Player of the Year finalists, but
next two we're going to talk about for sure. Yep.
Well, not for this class, but for
the future. Yep.
But when it comes to the upcoming year, 2025's early signing day already happened. 2024 early signing day already happened. When we're talking about the class of 26 and 2025 early signing day, you're going to hear his name.
Yep.
He's going to be one of those guys that has the hat dance
and all that stuff.
He's the number 1 rated dual threat quarterback of the class of 2026 as of now, according to some recruiting websites.
Yeah, right. Depending on who you ask.
Right,
right.
You might see a recruiter put a 5th star by his name at some point. Yep. That he's one of those guys that you might see that. 4-star already. He's really good. He was one of those guys that, 500 passing yards, yeah, he's a finalist. 450 passing yards, yeah, he's a finalist. 3,000 passing yards, he's really good. And wherever he ends up might very well be an SEC school. He's from the state of Alabama. We'll see where this goes. We'll hear his name, because a lot of these high school guys, but we'll hear his name early in his career, once he gets to the college level. So, great season. And we're going to move on to a guy that we're going to hear his name even more than that.
I was about to say, this is a guy that you're going to hear, just like Landon, you actually already heard about him already. If you're not, you're probably living on a rock by now.
I mean, you're not an hour or whatever into this video if you haven't heard of Elijah Haven before.
Yeah, and you said it, Elijah Haven, quarterback from the Dunham School. Got a chance to talk to him a lot in the offseason and he's that type of guy I let my daughter date. Just like an outstanding young man, how he carries himself, and he carries himself like a 40-year-old man, a grown man. And he plays like a grown man too. We talk about the number 1 quarterback in the country for the class of 2027 coming up. Number 1 player as well. There's so many superlatives you can say about this young man, but throwing the football, being a quarterback, he's got all the tools. All the tools as you will in the next big-time quarterback. Throwing the football, he's just heading into his sophomore year, right? He already broke all the Dunham passing records in his sophomore year. So that tells you something right there. 3,053 yards passing. He had 37 touchdowns, 925 yards rushing. He can run the football too. 21 touchdowns, kind of tall, lanky, athletic, strong arm, good touch. In a way, he kind of reminds you a little bit of Jaden Daniels a little bit. Now, he's not as explosive of a runner. He's a different runner. But as far as his throwing ability, throwing the ball downfield, his touch on the deep ball, and his athletic ability, you can see why LSU was like, hey, it kind of reminds me of somebody that we used to have.
The running style reminds me more of Josh Allen.
Yeah, running style is different, but he kind of reminds me a lot in other ways of Jaden.
Yeah.
But
you're just talking about a guy that is a special dual threat guy that LSU might have their eyes on.
There's a reason why a lot of people are comparing him to that. But, I mean, you look at it, 59 total touchdowns he scored this year. And I've called his games for Episcopal, and I'm just kind of like cover my eyes and just hope for the best, but like it was going to be tough for them going against Elijah Hayden.
I believe it was the rain game this year.
It was a rain game. I called his game the last year when he was a freshman. Didn't go so well then, but Elijah Haven's a special player. Was one play away from getting Dunham their first state championship, and I think since 2004, I believe, came this close. But guess what, Dunham fans? Good chance he'll be back. You got 2 more cracks at it, and they'll be back. I can tell you that.
I saw him at the Jamboree when they played U High, and they almost won the Jamboree, and he looked unbelievable then for like a 15-year-old. And then I got to see him in the state championship game, and he was so much better. I didn't know it was possible. Yep. He was like already one of the best quarterbacks in the country, or in the state. Excuse me, let me not be too crazy here. But as a sophomore in the state, already one of the best quarterbacks in the country at the beginning there. He was so much better. He had 37 passing attempts, and he had 32 carries in the state championship game where they almost won. It was like there was a 1 seed. He was awesome. Almost.
It's kind of Dortez-esque because he's getting the football. He's either running it or he's throwing it, but he's getting the football. You know that for a fact.
Awesome arm. So much trust already in that coaching staff with him. Sky's the limit. Sky's genuinely the limit for him. So we're gonna move on to another guy.
But the sky's the limit.
Sky's the limit. Literally, the sky is the limit to where that ball is going. We're talking about Peyton Pop Houston, quarterback out of Evangel, another one of these Shreveport kids. They make him a little different around there, apparently. He had challenging Ben Taylor, also in the Shreveport Olympics for quarterbacks. 4,480 passing yards, 817 of which were in one game.
You heard that right.
We'll talk about that in a second. 38 passing touchdowns. I think, 10 of them were in one game? 8 of them?
Yeah, I think he had
I think it was 10.
I think it was 10.
I think it was 10.
And there's the kicker you're about to talk about a little bit.
He also ran the ball for 900 yards, 960 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So, in one game, which he didn't win Player of the Week, because Dedrick Lassie...
Now it's the Dedrick Lassie week.
Yeah. Yep. Before you riot in the comments for not winning Player of the Week, he lost to Dedrick Lassie where he dropped 9 touchdowns.
Yeah.
817 passing yards and 10 touchdowns in a loss to, was it Delhi?
No, it was Captain Shreve.
It was Captain Shreve. Oh, right, because it was the playoff game. The rematch,
yep.
So
he did all that in a loss. There's the kicker. He lost the game.
He lost the game. He lost the game to Captain Shreve. They rematched in the playoffs, only combined for 110 points in the playoffs.
Only.
In a 54-48 win over Captain Shreve in the rematch in round 1. I believe they lost to Ash the next round, but a great season. Got better as the year went on. They started the season 1-5, rattled off 5 straight wins, got to the playoffs, won the first round of the playoffs because Pop Houston is a special kid. That 2027 QB class is pretty good. Kevin Bryant, Elijah Haven, obviously, and Pop Houston.
Yep. Some
special players and a special thrower of the football.
Yeah, you got that right. I mean, Evangel, you got Denny Duron, you got Evangel Christian. They'll find a quarterback that will throw. And they've always been known for throwing the football for a gazillion amount of yards. And Pop Houston able to do that in one game. Close to 1,000 yards. So I can't picture what a game would look like throwing for 800 yards in one game. And imagine being the statistician of that football game.
He couldn't keep up.
I mean, I don't know how you can keep up with all that.
Imagine filming the game from the sideline.
I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, 800 yards passing in one game. I mean... that's ridiculous, man. But it shows you what kind of player he is. Before he even really stepped foot on campus, everybody was talking about how big of a deal it was, and you saw it with his ability to throw and run. A lot of people have kind of been comparing him to Kyler Murray type. Really, that shows you what kind of player he is. But he's a special player. Can throw it, can run it. Yeah, he's a special player, and guess what, Evangel Christian? Y'all got 2 more years of him, so has 2 more shots as well, being a Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist. So speaking of a guy that can kind of do a little bit of everything. We'll talk about one of the coolest stories this year for our next Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist is North Iberville. I mean, first year, and that's pretty cool it landed on me because I'm kind of close to the program. My dad coached there. I know a lot of coaches personally that are over there, and they brought back the varsity football program. Went through a couple years of JV, played their first year of varsity this year, and all they did was only lose 2 regular season games, and they went 8-2.
So,
they hosted a playoff game. They won a playoff game, made the second round. They lost to a really good General Trask football team. But one of the leading captains was actually a guy who played both ways in the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, and that's Mikel Toussaint. He played linebacker, and he got some carries. You're talking about how great the running back class was? He even got a couple carries in that football game as well. But it shows you what kind of two-way player, especially when you're playing one day, that small level of football, you got to do a lot of things both ways. And he really stuffed the stat sheet, really both sides of the football. 90 tackles. He's a linebacker / running back. So on defense, he had 90 tackles. He had 18 tackles for a loss. He had 2 sacks. He had an interception. He had 3 forced fumbles. He had 4 fumble recoveries. He scored a defensive touchdown. Catch my breath. That's right. And then 1,000 yards rushing on offense, along with 12 rushing touchdowns on offense. So I saw him play, seeing and following Mikel over the last couple of years, and I think he's a type of player who's been a Gridiron Football Player, All-American, and he's been kind of grinding out that tough football player you kind of need, the kind of heartbeat of a team. That tough physical leader does the dirty work on defense, does the tough running on offense. So he's that type of player. Really helped North Iberville, kind of put them in a position where they can be a program to watch out for at the 1A level.
Yeah, in year 1 already making those strides is really good. He was another one of those really fun articles to write for the commitments leading up to the bowl game, because there was a lot of really fun film to watch. He's a really, really good player, very physical, very, very fun. Whether he's on tackling you or trucking you. Either way. But moving on to another one of my favorite players through this year, in a story of a season for the state champion, bow down to the public school, the Division 1 non-select state champion, Central High School. Not Jackson Furman.
Nope.
Not
DK.
Not the wide receivers. Not DK. K.D. Mays, the linebacker.
Kind of like Mikel. Yeah, in a little way.
Mikel,
yeah, kind of the heartbeat of that team. Yeah.
Heartbeat of that team. He played primarily, unlike Mikel, who is a two-way player that put up a good two-way season both ways. He got some carries. He looked really good as a running back.
Oh yeah.
Looked like I remember I was at the Neville game where he got a couple carries and I went, whoa. Who was the guy carrying the ball at that time? Oh, it was K.D. Mays.
It was K.D. Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. But he played linebacker, and he was part of the best defense in the state.
Oh yeah.
The entire state, the best defense, the leader of that defense, district defensive player of the year, the best defense, a psychopathic defense. I watched them play against Zachary football, held them to 3 points. Yeah, in the rain, don't care. Held them DeFecchio ref into 3 points. Because he was special and because that defense was special.
Yep.
Then I watched them play Neville. Jalen Nichols still got his, but they held that Neville team to I believe it was 13 points.
Yeah.
Because he was special. Because he was that good. Got the field goal block in that Neville game
that
led
play.
to the Marvin Joseph field goal return. Because he's the athlete, he's the leader, and then of course, as everyone knows, the Ruston game that.
Shocked everybody.
Unfathomable results.
Yeah, that shocked everybody.
Shut out Ruston.
Even Central fans. I guarantee it shocked Central playing the game. Yeah. It was that lopsided.
Yeah. That Ahmad Hudson and all these players, 0 points.
Yeah.
90 yards of offense. And because he was the leader, like his stat line was impressive, but he was the leader of a defense that was the best defense in the state. But let's talk about those stats real quick. 70 tackles, 12 quarterback hits, 10 sacks, double-digit sack season, really impressive. 6 pressures, 2 forced fumbles, had a pick. What did that look like?
Yeah. Stuff the stat sheet.
But most importantly, 28 tackles for loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the guy. That is the guy. Congratulations to him.
Absolutely. A big defensive player, part of those Mays twins that... Gave offensive coordinators nightmares every week. But KD is a special player. Anytime you kind of lead a defense like that, like Alex said, I mean, defense of the year, I mean, for sure. I mean, especially what they had to do a lot of times was carry the team. So, the essential defense, yeah. I do not recommend going up against KD and those guys, but he was the guy that really stirred the drink and everything. So we're going to go from defense to offense, back to where basically a regularly scheduled program. We got the defense and one defensive player go back to offense, right? Well, Luke Landry, I gotta say, I love my softballs.
Oh yeah,
I'm a lefty myself, so we got to stick out for the old southpaws out there. But
he's one of my guys for this list. Let's go.
Catholic New Iberia quarterback Luke Landry threw for 2,942 yards, 42 touchdowns. How about that touchdown to interception ratio? 42 total touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Only threw 3 interceptions the whole year, and he threw the football a lot. Was the MVP in that state championship game against Dunham, and kind of like Diesel Solari and Cecilia, kind of overcame the odds throughout each and every game. I was shocked when they went on the road to play the defending state champions in Calvary Baptist, and they were able to beat them on the road. And then follow that up with a great performance in the Superdome against Dunham, which was the number 1 overall seed, Elijah Haven, and it was a Haven and Landry show. I mean, Landry made some great plays. He knew where to go with the football. Some of those plays I know how he escaped from. I was like, how do you escape from that? But a great quarterback. Doesn't really get the credit he deserves. I mean, to lead that team to a state championship, and I think they're the most underrated state championship team from the Dome, because
no one saw it coming.
Nobody really saw it coming. Great underrated story that they've had. Coach Desormo, brother of the head coach of the Raging Cajuns. I mean, he was able to lead that team to a state championship. Luke Landry was the single call. You got to have a lot of trust in that young man, and a really talented quarterback. We said all year long that he was one of the better senior quarterbacks in the state, and he really shined as the games got bigger and better.
Yeah, this was one of those. It was one of the most wide open brackets, and we got to see this by a team that nobody predicted to win the championship. They beat Newman in shocking fashion, 31-0.
Yeah, that was the other one I forgot about.
Unbelievable. Like one of those where I saw it on online. I'm like, no, that can't be right.
Yeah, the score can't be right.
Let me reload the page. That's a typo. And then they beat Calvary in inexplicable fashion. The onside kick, and then the game-winning field goal. They were down by 9 with a minute left, and they go on to win the game. Unreal. Calvary was, if there was a favorite, it was probably Calvary Baptist, the defending state champions, and they beat them in inexplicable. What a loaded team you got to see. Calvary beat Episcopal. What a loaded team. And then the state championship game, one of the best games of the entire season. My personal favorite game of the entire year. We got to see Elijah Haven, the stud, against the seasoned veteran Luke Landry at the Southpaw. Houdini act. He looked awesome in that game, and he led them to a win, a state championship win that nobody saw coming. He led a team that did not have a playoff win. None of the seniors had a playoff win with that school, and they won the state championship. It was unbelievable. 3 straight against the 2 seed, the 3 seed, the 1 seed. Unreal. Moving on to another quarterback that led a team that was pretty good.
It's a righty. Unfortunately,
is a righty. But was another quarterback that led a state championship team.
Yep.
The led a team that was pretty good at football. I think they might have been okay. I'm not sure. We might want to get a check.
Pretty good.
He's pretty good.
That team's pretty good.
That team's pretty good. That team's pretty good. Okay, I'm not sure. We might need a few more data points to see.
Maybe.
The quarterback for Edna Carr.
John
Johnson. Just the greatest team on the planet, maybe. Might have given the Saints a run for their money.
They probably would beat the Saints right now, I'll be honest with you.
Richard Anderson and the 3 FBS wide receivers and all of that sort of stuff. But we're talking about John Johnson. He's the guy that made Player of the Year.
Yep.
The leader of the operation, the guy that gave us the keys to this car, that Lamborghini that was the car roster.
He didn't crash it. That's the most important thing.
He did not crash it.
Nope, he didn't. 3,300
passing yards, 34 touchdowns. 861 rushing yards and 14 rushing touchdowns. So he had 48 total touchdowns on the season. Was the leading rusher in the state championship game.
Yeah.
Not JT Lindsay, not the running back for Edna Carr. Him. He was the leading rusher for the state championship game, the biggest game of the year, the game that everyone was talking about, where they poured it on Ash. They're the best team in the state. There is absolutely no question. Love Central. Central's a great team, but they're the best team in the state. John Johnson was a special season for a special team that he was able to put together. Mm-hmm. Almost 50 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards. Unbelievable.
I've seen some great end-of-the-car quarterbacks play, and he has potential to be the best. He is that good.
Got another year.
John Johnson, he's the senior, is the offensive coordinator. His son is a quarterback, John Johnson Jr. And have John, seeing him, I called the Catholic High and the car game. Yeah. Really, you talked about his legs. His legs made a difference in that football game, especially when they were keying. Catholic was keying on the receivers. I know Dejon Smith had a good game, but they were keen on the other receivers. It was really the extending the plays, using his legs, being smart with the football. John was key in that semifinal win, calling that game. His legs made a difference in that football game. And you saw how his legs made a difference in the state championship game as well. He ran for a lot of touchdowns, and his ability to not only throw the deep ball, he's a good thrower of the football, but to escape and make plays happen when they're not there. That's a special quarterback, and he's obviously a quarterback we're going to be looking at as well, 2026 quarterback too. Special quarterback, special young man, and And the car, that was probably this year's and the car team was probably the best high school football team I've ever seen since covering Louisiana high school football. I'm about 10 years into it, so that was probably.
There's a lot more coming from him than from me.
Yeah, that was probably the best team I've covered. I know it's recency bias, but I mean I can't compare a team that was like that one, and it might be like saying something that next year they might not be as good. But they still can win a state championship next year, and one shot me, especially when you return him at the quarterback position. Yeah. Moving on, so John Johnson gets his opportunity as a Gridiron Football Player of the Year. This is a guy that hits close to home as well, because I followed this young man really from his early days of following him and knowing his family as well. But Nico Victorian as well, the quarterback for the Plaquemine Green Devils. Gotta get some love to Jay's not showing any love to your old the west side of the Mississippi River, right? But I've got a lot of ties to the program. My dad was the interim head coach at Plaquemine. He was a long time assistant coach over there. Nico Victorian, really got the Green Devils this close being in the state championship game. But what a season Nico has had. I followed Nico. He went to a Gridiron football camp as a sophomore at that time. I believe he was at Catholic. He was a backup to Daniel Beal at Catholic High, and then transferred over to Plaquemine. And when he got his time to shine, at Plaquemine. 2,260 yards passing. That's about 65% completion percentage. 29 touchdowns. Also ran for another 195 yards rushing and another 5 touchdowns. So 34 touchdowns for Nico Victorian. Great player, great quarterback, and been able to follow him. I know he came up this close for a player of the week a couple weeks ago. I think week 4. It was really early, week 3. It was really early in the season. But Nico Victorian, I think he deserves it for his play throughout his whole senior season, leading the Green Devils all the way to the semifinals. So, congratulations, Nico Victorian, for being the Gridiron Football Player of the Year finals.
Yeah, Nico had a great season. Not the last Plaquemine player we'll talk about.
Nope.
But had a great season. Large part of the reason why they made the state semifinals in a bracket to get to the semifinals. That was not easy. I think Northwest was in that bracket. I think Opelousas was in that bracket. That they knocked off to get there, so it was a really tough path. They came up short against Cecilia in the semifinals, but it was really, really tough sledding to get there. He was the leader of that team, so congratulations to him. We'll move on to a guy that you might be familiar with. A few guys are coming up that might be familiar with.
Down the final stretch, we had a couple guys left.
Yeah. Yep. You may have heard of JT Lindsay before, but he is, unsurprisingly,
a
Player of the Year finalist.
Of course.
Because he's JT Lindsay. I mean, do I need to talk about the stats? I don't know.
Maybe.
No, but I will go ahead and mention them. 1,729 rushing yards. It's 26 total touchdowns. 26 rushing touchdowns. He was awesome. He was electric the whole season. This Ash team we knew was going to be good this year. We knew they had a lot of really, really good players. Jimmy Duncan, Darius Washington, Carson Sellers, Jaden Lewis. The list goes on. But they still turned a lot of heads with how good they were. that I think you can still pretty definitively say the resume, the body of work they had, might still be the second best team in the state of Louisiana this year. You can talk about them, Central, Catholic,
Sure.
but they're in that conversation.
Sure.
Or other than Endicott, maybe the best team in the state. The game didn't go very well, but still they made the state championship game. They were undefeated. They beat Ruston. They beat Neville. They beat John Curtis. They crushed Neville. They beat John Curtis handily on the road to the state championship game in one of the toughest districts in the state this season. They came up short, of course. Not a great result in the state championship against Endicott, but outside of that, they're one of the best teams in the state still. And he was the engine of that team. Of a loaded roster, he was the guy. He's the guy that's going to LSU. So I got to see him in the Ruston game. We got to see him a few different games throughout the season where he was always awesome. The ball looked different in his hands. A level of explosivity that you do not see very often from players. And there's a reason why he in a sea of an amazing running back class. With all of the guys we've mentioned, a million guys, and we've got a few more that we're going to mention, a 4 player of the year. There's a reason why he's the number 2 running back in the state of Louisiana. And he's a 4-star running back still. He is, I believe, still a top 10 running back in the country. He's that guy. He's that good. He's that explosive. Congratulations to JT Lindsay, Player of the Year.
Yeah,
Finalists.
Yeah, make sure we have that in there. But yeah, JT Lindsay, great player. Led Ash, the Trojans, to a great season. Anytime win the district championship, and that district got saying something, going undefeated, going all the way to the state championship. I know the game at the state championship will have a sour taste in everybody's mouth, but still a great season from JT. Over 1,700 yards, 26 touchdowns, special season for the Trojans, and you saw it as JT Lindsay. He was the bell cow. He was the engine of that offense, and you saw wherever JT would go, that's where the Trojans would go, and that's what happened. Great season for JT Lindsay. We kind of figured that was going to be a good year for him in store. We talked about it at Gridiron Football Media Day at the beginning of the year. Next, we're going to go to actually a Gridiron Football player profile card guy we have this year, and that's Kane West from St. Edmund. Talk about a special season as well for the Blue Jays. Set all kinds of offensive records. They were putting up gaudy numbers. 270 points this game, 60 points,
yards of offense.
700 yards. It was week in, week out. And you have to give credit to the guy that was under center, the signal caller. Yeah. And that is Kane West. So Kane West, talk about throwing, running, 31 touchdowns to the air, 14 on the ground. Yeah, over 2,000 yards of offense. He's built like a linebacker, so when they get in goal line yardage, there's not a lot of deep defenders that want to tackle him because the way he's built. Don't want to bring him down one-on-one. You know that for a fact. He's a tough football player. He's kind of like when we talked about Keegan Abels earlier, just a throwback, old-school type of football player that you would want on your football team.
Yeah, he was great. Got to see him against Opelousas Catholic. He was really good. He had 5 2-point conversions, quarterback power every single time, unstoppable. Just we're better than you, and I'm going to do that. He was great. Super deserving of being here, of course, leading that St. Edmund team to the quarterfinals. They actually defeated, to get to the quarterfinals, the team of Harlem Berry. Harlem Berry. He doesn't really need much of an introduction, let's be honest. He's in the sea of 20 running backs that are on this list. He's the guy. He's the number 1 running back in the state of Louisiana. He's the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, number 1 running back in the country. So we're talking about a special 5-star athlete. Sunday speed is what it looks like. That it is different when he has the ball in his hands. And he had a great season. He had 2,100 rushing yards, 2,178, and 41 touchdowns. He was getting in the end zone all the time. He had a great season. Got to see him against Riverside, where it is just special speed, special speed. Everything. He's a great running back. He's a great player. Play some wide receiver as well for you, but he was the team and led them to a really a productive season, a solid season. They won a playoff game and all of that. Great player. It's Harlem Berry. You don't really need much to talk about with him because it's the guy. He's the guy in the sea of these running backs. He's the best one, the number 1 player.
Yeah, he's got that Reggie Bush just type of just game breaking ability. And we talked about, he gave a good comparison as well to the Lions running back as well.
Yeah,
Jahmyr Gibbs. So he's got that type of speed that just when he's in the open field, if he can get to that second level, you can forget about it. I mean, might as well don't even try, because you're not catching him, like you said, 4.3 40 speed. Absolutely just dynamic football player. And for a guy like that, especially like to give a school like St. Martin's Episcopal, it's not like the Cars or the Catholics, give that school some pub and show you that these guys can come out of small schools as well. He's going to have a great career. I'm really excited to see him put on the purple and gold and see what he can do for the LSU Tigers. And obviously I'll be watching him a whole lot in spring camp, and when we talk about the Chase with Jays, we want to talk a lot about LSU coming up in the offseason. But yeah, I mean, he's going to be a special player. Looking forward to see what he does in Baton Rouge when he comes and wears the gear next year. All right, so we're going to go from might as well, par for the course, running back, right? Might as well. We're on the top of the discussion, and we're going to go to a guy that we followed pretty early on, and that was Rajon Zeno from Jennings High School. And Jennings is another school, like we talked about with some of the other ones, and we talk about Leesville, was produced great running backs. Jennings produced the Etienne brothers. They're pretty good, and they're pretty good. And they got another good one coming up, Rajon Zeno. I mean, we followed him. He went to our camp, I believe, in Eunice a couple years ago at St. Edmund High School, and really raised some eyebrows then when he was only like a sophomore at the time. Or I think it was going to his junior year. But he's a big time player, and he actually had to split some carries this year. He ran for like 1,900 yards last year as a junior, but this year he ran for 1,400, a little bit close to 1,500 yards, 21 touchdowns. Jennings was a high seed. They were like the number 2 seed in the playoffs, and the big reason was Rajon Zeno, and he was the up bat position. Kind of Reed Chauvin was playing, but he's your typical running back. He's got great speed, good vision, can bounce off tackles, can break away from opponents, and you saw that in the Gridiron Football American Bowl game. It was part of a loaded running back room we've had in the Gridiron Football American Bowl game. He was a special player, early commit, one of the earliest commits we've had this year for the bowl game, and you saw him. It was great to see him really ball out in the senior year and in the game, and he's one of the type of kids, he's been to our camps, been to our bowl games, had a great career. We had to hire him. We had to put him in there as Gridiron Football Player of the Year, for sure.
Yeah, he's had a really good career. Had a really good season, but it's the career that's been really impressive for him. And we got to see him in the bowl game, so very well deserved, absolutely. Speaking of bowl game, guys, we got another one here.
We got a string of them.
Here with Caden Jones, the running back / wide receiver from Walker. He committed specifically as a wide receiver for the bowl game, but ended up getting some carries.
Oh yeah, which was the right call.
Which was the right call. And in a really good running back room, he
scored a touchdown.
Was one of the standouts.
Yeah,
I would say. He had a really good game, and it was what started. It was the cap to a great season. Finished with 1,600 all-purpose yards. Most of those were rushing, but had some receiving as well, and 22 total touchdowns. So it was a really good year for him for a Walker team that did a lot of really good things this year. They knocked off touchdown twice. There were touchdowns only 2 losses of the season, and so he was the guy that was the engine for a team that had an undefeated team's number in a lot of ways. It was a really good Walker team in their own right as well, winning that playoff game. This is a great Walker team, and he was a great player for them, and there's a reason why we got to see him at the bowl game.
Yeah, incredible bursts. I mean, I saw it from the press box doing the PA for the game. Incredible bursts of speed, and you knew when he was on the field because he wore 94 at running back for Walker. So I was like, am I watching something from the 1930s or something? Yeah. But no, he wore 94 at running back, but he made it his own. He owned it. He owned that number, and he made it his own. There'll probably be a bunch of 94 jerseys out there at Walker next year of fans wearing them because he made it a popular number. And what a career, what a year he's had, a senior year as well. 1,600 yards, 22 touchdowns. And another guy, Gridiron Football, All-American Bowl Game commit, showed you how low the running back position was. He is a Gridiron Football Player of the Year finalist. Very underrated just because he's not maybe on the marquee team as some other guys are, but just a special football player, and he really did what he really could with the pieces he's had. Caleb Joseph from Bel Air. This year at the running back position, 1,700 yards rushing and 20 touchdowns. And keep in mind, he might not have had other pieces. Like he wasn't on the Catholic High. He didn't play for Endicott. He didn't play for those big, great teams. They didn't make
the offense.
Yeah, pretty much. They didn't make the playoffs this year, but Caleb Joseph was a special player. They got some, like Andy calls them, diamonds in the rough. He is a diamond in the rough. A great running back. You saw it in the Gridiron Football Bowl game.
One of the standouts.
He was one of the standouts. He was running hard, and it took multiple guys to bring him down. He's built like a running back. You can just look at him like, oh yeah, he's a running back. Saw him in the spring scrimmage, and he stood out, for sure. So he definitely deserved this opportunity to be shown, get his name out there a little bit more. And I think he really earned it, his opportunity, and showed why. And you saw it in the bowl game.
Yeah, there were other good players on that team. Jaden Bangwell also made the bowl game. Was also a part of the bowl game,
right.
But he was the number one threat in that offense,
right.
And he still put together a great season. And
yeah.
so to be able to do that, and he showed what he was worth at that bowl game, and I think he's one of those players that we love to see do really well in the bowl game because he doesn't always get those opportunities during the season on a team that didn't quite have the same kind of oomph to it as the Catholics of the world, the Anacards, right? And moving on, finally.
Last but not least, we're finally here. Finally the finish line, Alex.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us on this journey. But our final one, we hinted at him earlier, Tyrese Mosby, the running back out of Plaquemine. He finished the season with 2,535 rushing yards. And was that 42?
Yeah,
is that
42,
the correct number?
42 touchdowns.
That looks like a typo. 42 total touchdowns, and he was, with 10 yards per carry, the district MVP for his district. That is an incredible season. We finished this off on a very high note here with Tyrese. Even among the Player of the Year finalists, that is a number that stands out, 42 total touchdowns. That's in the Xavier Ford, Jonathan D'Artez, Ben, not a stone's throw away from Ben Taylor, Harlem Berry, those kind of numbers. Great season for Tyrese Mosby. We talked about the quarterback, Nico Victorian, earlier. He came very close to winning Player of the Week back in Week 3, but Tyrese Mosby came really close a few times as well. I believe he finished third in 1 week, finished second in 1 week, a multiple-time performer as a finalist for Player of the Week. He's a finalist here for Player of the Year as well.
Absolutely, Alex. I don't think the audience got that. We might have to start all over again.
Yeah. The recording might have broken. We might need to do this again.
Yeah, but 40 finalists, 40 deserving finalists. We actually had to cut some because there's only so many finalists we can really go with. We could have probably add another 10, 20 more. But we decided to go with these 40 just because of what they did during their seasons, of how they helped us and how they've represented Gridiron football well. There's some tough cuts we had to make. But appreciate, really congratulations to all 40 nominees for just being nominated for Gridiron Football Player of the Year. I know this is the third year since I've been on board that we've done this. The first year was just in state of Louisiana. Last year we brought a little bit out of state, and you saw Caven Bryant win it. And now we got a little bit more diversity as well from Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma, of course Louisiana take a majority of the list. But just want to say this is how it works. We narrowed down the finalists. We did our part. Now it's your turn. It's the fans. You have to decide who the Gridiron Football Player of the Year is. It's so tough to decide from us. Hey, might as well get the fans decide and nominate and really vote for your favorite player. So this is how it works. So we take voting different ways. You can vote as much as you want. For the first week, we're actually going to open it, I believe, Thursday. As you're watching this video, the poll will be up.
The poll is up.
The poll will be up.
It's up on the video.
When you see the video, the poll's up, so you can vote on it now. But we'll close it a week exactly. So we'll leave a whole week of voting probably till next Thursday, and we'll close it there. But with so many finalists, we are not going to announce the winner after the week. What we're going to do is if you made the top 10, you've made the final top 10 list for the Gridiron Football Player of the Year. So you'll get another week of voting. But this is where it comes in.
Maybe we should have called them semifinalists.
So I guess you say Gridiron Football semifinalists, right?
That doesn't sound as good, though.
Yeah, but they're all finalists. I mean, all 40 have an equal opportunity, I guess, for the crown. So if you vote, you can vote as many times as you want, or you can also donate to Gridiron Football. Right? You're here at Gridiron Football. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So your donations mean a lot. So we're taking donations for Player of the Year. But this is how we're going to do it. We'll add up donation votes and just normal votes. You can vote as many times as you can. But we're going to add all the votes. The top 10 getters for the votes will move on to the next round for another week of voting. But in order, we're going to go off of donation votes. So let's say maybe the number one person has the most total votes, but they don't have the most donation votes. It's whoever has the most donation votes. They will be leading the pack when we put the votes up for the next week.
So basically, the donation votes will carry over to
the donation votes will carry over to the next week, but the other votes will be wiped away.
Yeah.
But those other votes will at least put you in the running for the 10.
Yeah.
So that's what's important about just voting at just numerous amount of times, so you can get your player past the first stage.
It's also reminder, it's $1 is 10 votes.
Right. So it's still the same process with different Player of the Week. $1 is 10 votes. So if you donate $10, that's 100 votes. So we're doing this because it's part of a nonprofit organization, and if you love our events, you love what we're doing with the Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game, if you're loving our camps of supporting and promoting players, we need support as well. So that's why we're doing this, and we hope that you can support us even after all the Player of the Year stuff is over as well. You can still donate throughout the course of the year. In fact, we're encouraging everybody. If you can donate $10 a month, we'll put you on our sponsors page on our website. Your name will be on our website for being a proud supporter of Gridiron Football. So if you donate $10 per month, that's all we're asking for, then we'll put you on our sponsors page. It'll mean a whole lot to us. Any donation, we really appreciate. We really thank you for it. But if you like what we're doing, if you like our Gridiron Football Bowl game, or events, or camps, or tournaments, or media days, all of that, we would love your support. So please donate for Gridiron Football. We really appreciate it. And yes, and like I said from before, donate, vote, be a part of it, have fun with it, and then we'll announce the final 10 finalists at the end of next week. Yes,
so it was very, very happy being here. We're finally done. Finally done. Everything you said, absolutely. It's the new year, so it could be a New Year's resolution for you if you'd like. Instead of that New Year's resolution to go out and I'm gonna go get a gym membership and I'm gonna go work out, and then you drop it after 2 weeks and you're wasting that gym membership.
Hey, just spend it on Gridiron Football.
You're helping kids doing this. We're a nonprofit. This is all about the kids, all about getting them exposure, getting them chances, looks for the next level. So that can be a really productive thing to do with those $10 a month instead. And so, genuinely, it makes a world of difference to us. So anything you can give, whatever it may be, you can support a player.
Whatever donation is
anything is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much.
Congratulations to all 40 of our finalists. Like we said, we had to make a lot of tough cuts. So just because you might not be on this list doesn't mean you didn't have a great season. That's not what it means in the slightest. We had to stop at some points. We couldn't list every player on every roster. You know, there were a lot of really great players in the state of Louisiana and all across the country this season. So again, thank you for having me on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very long show. Very long show. Hope the mic picked up everything correctly on all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you'll see this. Today is Thursday. You're seeing this. The cutoff will be next Thursday. We'll announce the 10, and then we'll have voting.
We'll have a whole another week to decide who is the Gridiron Football Player of the Year. We'll announce the winner in 2 weeks, and then we'll give away the actual award at the Gridiron Football Banquet, which we haven't decided a date yet, but we're working on that right now. And then that will also, one more point, and that would highly encourage, if you missed the list, that will encourage you, if you want to be on the list, that will encourage you most to show up to our camps, show up to our events. The camp schedule is already posted with some of our camps. We're still posting other ones, getting those finalized. So make sure you go to gridironfootballusa.com/league camps. We want to see you there. What's the best way to be on our radar for a bowl game or player of the year or any of that? come to our events. Come to our 7-on-7 tournament, February 1st or February 2nd. It's going to be at Lamar Dixon Expo Center. So if you're a 7-on-7 team coach, wants to get involved, wants to be a part of it, make sure to go to GridironFootballUSA.com and get registered. But congratulations to all 40 finalists. Appreciate Alex Allison for hopping on the show with me. Glad he's on board. Looking forward to having Alex on board that's here with us. Looking forward to having more shows like this. And stay tuned. Make sure to vote, donate, support your guy. Go all in for your guy to win Player of the Year.
Vote early, vote often.
Vote early, vote often. Unlimited votes, unlimited donations. You can make the most of it. So we're leaving it up to you. Decide the Gridiron Football Player of the Year. Next week, next Thursday, we'll announce the final 10 and see who will be in the running for the Gridiron Football Player of the Year. Best of luck, and we'll see y'all guys next week.